What's up, girls? I just read My Body by Emily Ratajkowski. I listened to it on Audible, on Spotify actually. She reads the book herself. It's very melancholy. Even the reading is like, a very serious, kind of solemn reading. And there are 12 different essays, all kind of having to do with like her relationship with her body and the industry of modeling and seems like she's upset about some patriarchal hurdles maybe that she has to jump through. I read this book because I was hoping it would inform my writing of a character for my second novel. So I think it definitely accomplished that, but I thought I would make a review on it as well. It's interesting, like, it's a little tough to critique it at all because, like, it's supposed to stand as this, like, pro-woman, pro-feminism book. And I think to say anything, like, to disagree with anything about it instead of just being purely, like, congratulatory kind of makes it seem like you're anti those things. So it's actually been interesting because I've had to, like, really think through my reactions to things and why I feel certain ways about the book. What I came away with was this. She kind of circles around this issue of, like, she doesn't feel like she is seen for her actual identity. She feels like she's seen, just as a body, basically, because she's, like, this beautiful model, has this great body, and she's, like, upset at the way the world is for not being seen as a person in the context of these fashion shoots or whatever. And I think it's actually, like, a very universal thing to think about or go through for a lot of people is, like, to not feel like you're the person that other people see you as. That can be, like, a real point of, like, existential confusion, and I think can create a lot of friction for a lot of people in their lives. And I actually think that's, like, a very interesting problem to talk about and discuss ad nauseum. The issue I had with the way this book, like, kind of explores that problem is, like, it feels like she's saying, everyone just sees me for my extreme, like, beauty and amazing body. And, like, I wish I could just be seen exactly as I am, like you normies reading the book. So that there's, she doesn't say that outright, obviously. But there is kind of, like, this, like, undercurrent. It feels a little bit patronizing, or if anything, like, it's just she's in, like, a very extreme circumstance, like a very unique position that I think it's hard to relate to. And I wouldn't think, I'm not a woman, so I'm even, like, one more step removed from what she's talking about, maybe, being objectified in certain ways. But I would think, just from, like, my experience of reading other things by women or, like, knowing women in my personal life, that they wouldn't really relate to what she was writing about either. It's also, like, very, just kind of feels, like, overwhelmingly negative. There's, like, an interesting, like, psychological thing that I feel like a lot of people do is, like, when they have something that's, like, really to be desired, that's in great scarcity, in her case, like, physical beauty, I think what can happen is, like, there can be this, like, you can face a lot of resentment from other women. You can, probably, I mean, she totally does like come across a lot of creepy guys, which like, obviously that sucks. It feels like in a vacuum, that's awful. It feels like it's a problem of abundance. Like, I think you would, if you were put in a vacuum and someone asked if you would like to be, very physically beautiful or not, and, told you all of the different pros and cons of each, you would probably pick to be physically beautiful every time. Now, I'm not saying like you shouldn't talk about whatever, creepy guys, hitting on you, or bad experiences you've had with men as a result of being so beautiful. But it feels like our identities, exist in these liminal spaces, and what we choose to focus on, really grows a lot. And so I feel like she's been given this really great gift to be like, physically beautiful to the point where she's been able to like make a living off of it, to a pretty extreme, like, to the highest capacity, basically, within that industry. It feels like there's like so much to focus on, like being happy about. There's so many like cool, positive, optimistic spin she could have put on it, but it just kind of sits in this like negative space. And that paradox of identity is like very interesting to me, focusing on the positive versus the negative, and what that kind of does for your life. I always kind of end up like circling back to Pascal's wager over this idea of identity, where it's like, Pascal's wager is something that is not true, you convince yourself that it's true, and in doing so it becomes true. So Pascal is arguing for the cultural good of the belief in God, saying that like, let's take it for granted that God does not exist, but to believe in God, and act as if there was a God, would create a lot more good than bad, in his perspective, from his perspective, right? So I think of that like in the case of like identity, and like in my own life a lot, like you only really ever get to exist in your own skin, in your own body. That's why it's kind of hard for me to comment on her book, because like she has experiential knowledge of what she's gone through, and I'm just kind of like abstracting, trying to put myself in her shoes, trying to put myself in the shoes of people like her, or pretend how I would feel if I was put in those situations. And it's kind of impossible, because a lot of who I am is like the sum of my experiences and how I've responded to them, right? But it just feels like, I think people worry about being so positive that they're going to like lose touch with reality, or maybe like get it taken advantage of and not know it. And people don't realize the cost of focusing on negative things in their personal lives. They don't realize like how focusing on your issues in these ways like makes them feel a lot bigger. The subjective nature of like how you respond emotionally to your experiences matters a lot, So anyway, that was cool. This book actually got me thinking about a lot of like big questions, because I didn't want to like come on here and be like, oh, this is why, it sucks, blah, blah, blah. Because I didn't think that anyway, but I didn't want to be perceived as thinking that. So it kind of brought me to those two paradoxes of identity. Anyway, thanks for watching.